Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me again yet another conversation with somebody amazing. I have with me Justin Sobion, a fellow Trinidadian, and I came across Justin's work a few years ago when we were both doing TEDx talk. So I invite you to go and look at his TEDx Port of Spain talk from, I believe it was, correct me, Justin, if I'm wrong, I think it was 2020, but it was in the middle of COVID in any event.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah.
And it's a fascinating TEDx talk. I encourage you to go look at it. Thank you for joining me, Justin. Please introduce yourself and tell our viewers everything about who you are and what you do.
All right. Thank you, Marla. And of course, you took my mind a little way back then to COVID when we did that TEDx talk together.
Yes.
Working with a group. Yeah, it was seemed like the twilight zone back in the days trying to do that online. But yeah, now we're here again. That's 5 years later. As you said, my name is Justin Sobion. I've been from Trinidad and Tobago, um, living in New Zealand for the past 6, 7 years, going on to 7 years now, working with the University of Auckland, a lecturer at the University of Auckland in New Zealand, the Faculty of Law. And yeah, that's me. Called to the bar in 2002. So it's a
Over
almost two
20 years.
decades ago, 2002. I was proudly admitted to the bar by my late father. That was back in the day, in 2002. Yeah, it seems like just the other day, but it still is a little while way back. So yeah, we're here, of course, to talk about the ICJ climate change case, in which I was integrally involved, especially from the Caribbean. The
Yeah.
Caribbean and the Pacific, we really work together in this. And when I say the Pacific, I'm talking about the Pacific Island states. Yeah.
Well, Justin, before we get into the ICJ case, I just want to talk a little bit about the specific type of lawyer that you are, because when we did that TEDx talk, I mean, I was blown away because I had never known, I'd never thought that, so you are a lawyer that deals with a very specific area of law. And I want you to talk about that because I found it blew my mind 5 years ago. So before we get to the ICJ, tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'm an international environmental lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, uh, with a little bit of human rights in between. But we know that human rights and when it comes to climate change is not only an environmental issue, it's also a human rights issue. When you think about just the right to a healthy planet, it affects the right to life, for example, one of the most fundamental rights any human being can have, right? Because if you don't have life, you can't
Absolutely.
enjoy your other human rights, right? So climate change, and that's the one of the reasons, because I used to work with the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, and then of course I had that environmental background with my education, my master's at that time.
Okay.
Um, but when I was in Geneva, you heard the special rapporteur for the environment saying that rivers should have legal rights. And when I was like, rivers have legal rights, where is this coming from? And then the forest should have legal rights, and all these things were coming out of New Zealand. So that really attracted my interest to come to New Zealand, and
Fascinating.
and I
Yes.
did my that's why I did my PhD, and yeah, so my TEDx talk was on the rights of nature. Yeah,
I
should nature
loved
have
it.
rights? Yeah, yeah. So it was, but the thing is, everybody has been saying, "Oh, that's like real groundbreaking. That's fascinating." But
Yes.
this was something that was being discussed since in the 70s. So it's
Yes.
now gaining traction, really. So yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But I loved it because when you think about it, if rivers and forests didn't have rights and weren't protected, then we are in jeopardy. And that's
Mm,
where it's important. It's not just, you're not just a tree hugger. You're actually,
mm.
in the end, it's you, I guess one can say it's almost selfish interest in the end, fundamentally, but because we have to protect nature to protect ourselves.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, because if we always said, like, if companies could have rights, right? If
Exactly.
companies could be individuals or companies could be persons, you can sue a company or company could sue someone, then, why not give nature rights, right? We need
Absolutely.
nature more than companies, I would think. Well, if you're talking from a green perspective like me, right? But
Well, we
yeah,
need air to breathe, and companies
yeah,
don't produce air. So,
exactly. Well, you get what I'm saying. So yeah,
yes,
it goes in. It goes in. I don't know a lot of persons. We have a lot of debates about this when I go up the islands, Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, talking about it, especially before the TEDx talks. It's like the people are just like, well, I'm a human being, and sometimes I feel like my rights are not respected. So why should I give
true.
nature rights? So there are different ways to look at it, but I think it's a more, for me, it's a more philosophical view. It's a way of to respect nature. I think the rights should be treated differently in a way. But that will go into another argument. Like human rights, we know are different from nature rights, but it's a way of just engendering that respect
Respect.
for nature and so on. So yeah, so it has to be ingrained in our mindset that nature is not a commodity, but something that can be that is beneficial for all of us to live and thrive with.
For sure, respect, but also it makes us recognize the interlinkages between nature and our own lives and our own rights. But thank you for that
Exactly.
overview. And I just so tell us about how you became involved. Well, first of all, tell us a bit about the ICJ. Now, this is a recent ruling by the International Court of Justice, which is the highest court in the world, that made a ruling on the obligations of states as it relates to the climate crisis, um, just as a pretext. But could you tell us about that and how you became involved in this landmark ruling?
Yeah, I was just, to be quite honest, I came across it quite accidentally, but in a pleasant way, right? um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was, well, as you said, the ICJ, the highest court in the world, and the youths, it started off as a grassroots movement. Now, this wasn't any state that said, all right, let's take climate change to the International Court of Justice. No, this didn't start with any state at all. It started with 27 Pacific law students between the ages of 17 and 19 sitting down in
Amazing.
the University of South Pacific, who I learned after a while the University of the South Pacific was actually modeled after the University of the
The
West
University of the
Indies.
West
Yeah,
Indies,
yeah, they
yes.
actually tell me
Yeah.
that. Yeah, because they were just like, we got the idea. So for example, in Vanuatu, I think they have the law faculty. In
Yes,
Fiji is
that's correct.
engineering, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so different islands are specialized. And we did the same thing. Barbados was the law faculty. Jamaica was the if you wanted to study medicine and
Yes.
engineering, I think you went to Jamaica. Or Trinidad was engineering. But
Trinidad
now
was
I think
engineering,
yeah,
yes.
but now I think the things have changed. Everybody's doing everything now, and that's for me. And my dad and I used to talk about that. This goes against the whole treaty and the establishment of the University of the West Indies, but that's another story. Where it was supposed to bring, because when I started law at the University of West Indies, I spent my 2 last years in Barbados, and that's where you met everybody. You met Jamaicans, you met Trinidadians, you met Kititians, you met St. Lucians. Everybody came together. Barbadians, they came together. So it was a real melting pot. But now, if you have the law faculty just in Trinidad, somebody who's studying law in Trinidad will just meet their Trinidadian counterparts.
Yes.
It never,
So it
so
kind
it
of
goes
affects
against
the
the region.
regionalism,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
But yeah, so the University of South Pacific really is the only other regional university on earth. And
yeah.
but so you stumbled on this. But what I found, before you get into that, what I found absolutely fascinating and something people need to really understand, is that this was started just by a bunch of young students. And so it tells you, you don't have to be a state, you don't have to be powerful, you don't have to have wealth, you don't have to have status to make a
Yeah.
difference. That's a real
Mm.
that's a real powerful message that I want to come out of this.
Yeah, it was a grassroots movement. So
Mm-hmm.
that time was in 2020. It was COVID again. It was during the
Mm-hmm.
TEDx talk, I think. And then I was doing my PhD and working with we have a Center for Environmental Law. And the then, the then president or chair of that Center for Environmental Law in New Zealand said, "Well, Justin, you're doing your PhD on the rights of future generations. Did you know about this case that these Pacific students they're trying to work on? I think I know the gentleman. His name is Solomon Yeo, and I know the gentleman who is one of the leading students. And you should have a talk with him, and it will also help you because the work that they're doing is reflects in your PhD. So all right, so she set up this meeting with me and Solomon. And then I
Mm-hmm.
remember it was, as I said, during COVID, and he was just like, "Okay, my name is Solomon, and I'm from the Solomon Islands." So I was like, "Is this guy
Wow.
joking me? Or is this a joke?" I was just like, "This is COVID, so anything can happen. Anything." I was just going, "All right." Solomon from Solomon Islands. He's like, "Yeah, for true, my name is Solomon." So his name really is Solomon, right? So that was like a big joke for me at the beginning, and we still laugh about it how he put it across.
Yeah.
So Solomon, when we were talking, he was like, "You know what? I never met anybody from the Caribbean, and we are
Wow.
having this campaign, and I would like, could you assist getting states to assist us because we got Vanuatu to because as so the ICJ, you can't bring you have to be a state to bring an
You have to
action.
be a state, yes. Mm-hmm.
So persons like you and me, we can't just file a claim in the ICJ. So they needed a state to support them. So it started in Vanuatu. They got the government of Vanuatu to support them. So then the
Mm-hmm.
government of Vanuatu said, well,
The environment minister, Ralph,
Ralph,
um,
Ralph, I just
I
call him
forget
Minister
his
Ralph.
name. Minister Ralph. Yes, I met him in Vanuatu.
Rabajengo, yeah. I think it's,
Yes,
yes, yeah. I just call him Mr. Ralph because, yeah. But
Minister
Minister
Ralph,
Ralph,
good
yeah,
guy.
he's a really nice guy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So he
So
was
Minister
then,
Ralph agreed to take this up from these students and
yeah,
file at the
yeah,
ICJ. Mm-hmm.
yeah. But the thing is, if you go for this, so this is what you call an advisory opinion of a court, and you need, it's like a parliament, right? Passing a motion or resolution, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
There are 193 states of the UN, and they wanted you for a resolution to pass at the UN, you need a majority, a simple majority. So that would have been 96.5 states. So let's say
States.
97 states they needed.
Mm-hmm.
So so of course, so Solomon said, well, so far we just have Vanuatu, right? No government had supported no as yet. So he's just like, we need as much states to support. So can you
Mm-hmm.
help us get the Caribbean support? We have persons working in Africa, persons working in Europe, persons working so on, right? Across the
Mm-hmm.
region, Asia, because the UN, they have regional blocks.
Yes.
So when he said that, I was just like, well, I was calling to help. So, well, the legal aspect, but now you want the political help. So no problem. So that's when you can kind of like stand on the shoulders of giants, if you want to put it that way, because my dad was a politician, as you know, and he was a former
Mm-hmm.
attorney general Trinidad and Tobago. Then he was principal at law school in Jamaica. So I know, okay, I have like Jamaica and I have Trinidad and Tobago. Let me
Trinidad.
try to
Mm-hmm.
see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I started like, and then, all the people, all those politicians in Trinidad and Tobago, they were my dad times, right? So Keith Rowley, for example, would have been the Minister of Agriculture when he and dad were in Parliament. So I could pick up the phone and talk to him. I could pick up the phone and talk to, the Attorney General in Jamaica. And I was just using my dad's contact, talk to Ralph Gonzalez in St. Vincent and Grenadines because he and dad were friends. And we were just spread it. I put together, we just like three of us in the Caribbean, a small legal team trying to get the political work done. Uh, and
And
then,
all of this you all are doing pro bono of your own
yeah,
time and energy and love. Yeah.
yeah, that was
Mm-hmm.
well for
Mm-hmm.
most of the for the we
Mm-hmm.
worked for the last 4 5 years pro bono. It's just
Yeah.
towards the ending you will get when we got funding, but it was just more or less funding to travel to we
Yeah.
had meetings in Barbados, so you get funding. So it really wasn't a paid job per se. We were just doing it out of our passion, really,
Right.
and and I think all environmental lawyers, most of us, we work because we're passionate about it. Although
Yeah.
we know that environmental law has become now like a kind of fad, I would think a kind of trend. Persons
Mm.
just because it's the trendy thing in now, but I think 90% of the persons who work in environmental law are really doing it out of passion, and so that's how it started. And then I remember we had to call on CARICOM. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I knew the general counsel of CARICOM at the time. Her name was Colita Babs Schaefer. She's no longer there, but we worked together in Barbados. So I, of course, picked up the phone again, say, Colita, we need, CARICOM support and so on. And she was just like, she came up with the idea and said, well, the heads of government are meeting in Belize. This was in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
The heads of government are meeting in Belize. So let's just put it on emotion, put it on the table, and they
Amazing.
have to agree to it. So we spoke about that, and but to be quite honest, at the beginning, not very much Caribbean states were interested in this whole project.
Mm.
Yeah, we faced a bit of a uphill task because, well, Trinidad and Tobago, our own home country, wasn't involved. That's another story. Even though we did do some work there, but they did not get Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, St. Kitts and Nevis, Haiti.
Does it have anything to do with oil and gas?
Oil and gas, yeah, I
Yeah.
suspect, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, nobody told me that. Just I'm just drawing. I could be wrong, but that's what I feel.
You
But
drew
Trinidad
a
and Tobago,
yeah, yeah.
Guyana,
Mm-hmm.
um, Suriname, and Haiti. Well, Haiti, of course, we reached out to Haiti, but political situation around that time, the president got assassinated, and Haiti still is a difficult
Unstable,
situation
yeah.
in terms of
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, Suriname, I'm not so sure why. Saint Vincent, Saint Kitts and Nevis, they wanted to join, but very last minute. So the four
Okay.
countries, CARICOM countries that really should have been there were Trinidad and Tobago, Ghana, um, Suriname, let's say, right? Um, so yeah, but at the end of the day, we got 9 countries out of the 14. Now I say 14 because Montserrat is a special territory of the UK.
Yep.
So they could not have been participated because of their special status with the United Kingdom.
Yes.
So we got 9 out of 14, which I think was, especially for some of these states, most of us actually, was the first time ever appearing before the International Court of Justice. St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I think Jamaica, all these countries. We were just, it was a historic moment for all of us, and
Right.
uh, and I became, because of the work we started off, I became the coordinator for the Caribbean countries. Just like we had like coordinating meetings, we had a number of Zoom meetings, and also we had in-person meetings in Grenada and Barbados before the hearings. So
Nice.
yeah, so that's how it really started
That's
in a nutshell. I was just the person that helped to build the bridge for Solomon Yow
between
to
between
yeah,
the Pacific and the Caribbean.
the
That's so
Caribbean. Yeah,
beautiful. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
I love it. And so you
Mm,
got the Caribbean through your contacts, got the Caribbean through CARICOM as well to
yeah,
come on board, 9 of them. And
yeah,
so you all were able to pull together the 97 states
yeah.
at the
Well,
UN General Assembly.
the thing is, it never even went to a vote because
Really
it was unanimous. I remember at that time
amazing.
I was in Vanuatu because towards the end, I was there uh, working on my PhD. So I spent 4 months there working with
Hmm.
the government, and just it was kind of like a small mini sabbatical, really. So I
Hmm.
was just
Hmm.
there. Well, I was researching, so
Hmm.
and work helping them, and then Solomon had called me. No, it was another person from the Pacific Islands. They called me to say, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, because it was New York time, right? So in the
Right.
Pacific. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah. Just because I told them to call me. And they're like, okay, it passed, the resolution passed. I was like, all right, what was the vote? And they was like, oh, there was not a vote. I was like, what do you mean there was no vote? Because I was expecting, like, so what's it?
Yeah.
It's like, everybody just consented. So they,
Wow.
yeah, there's like the president of the General Assembly asked to go to a vote, and nobody wanted to go for a vote. So if you don't go to a vote, it just assumes everybody consented.
Everybody's
But I think,
happy to go ahead. Yes.
yeah, yeah, but I think um, it on reflection, it probably never went to a vote because I think they realized that they had the majority. And if one state said, let's go to a vote, they didn't want to, show any bad face, really, I would think.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
I think they didn't want to
they're too
be the one.
embarrassed
Yeah.
to say, I don't
Because
necessarily agree with this.
yeah, and if you put it
Hmm.
to, I think they had the numbers already, and they just said like if you put it to vote, they would have lost the vote, and
Right.
just to save their face and just to
Yes,
not go down the wrong side of history calling for a vote. I think, yeah, because there are a number of states who didn't want this to happen, and we all know who those states are
of
who didn't
course, we
want to go
know
to
who
the
they
ICJ.
are.
Yeah, so they just,
Right.
but we had the numbers, so it was. I think that's why. Yeah.
So, okay, so so then the ICJ worked since, I guess, COVID time till just a couple months ago, just over a month ago, and to deliver this ruling. And basically, what they did was they outlined what they felt was the obligation of states as it relates to the climate crisis. What are states obligated to do? Um, and I had written about this in my monthly report just about a month or two ago. Kind of, I just tried to summarize it because it's not. I mean, people like me who are not lawyers, it's not easy to read these documents and make sense of them. So I tried to
Yeah.
summarize it. And but tell me, if you can, what are the major highlights for you in terms of what this ruling says states are supposed to do, given the climate crisis we're in?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so for small island states, especially for myself, I was co-counsel for Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Hmm.
And so the hearings were heard in December 2024, and the
Hmm.
ICJ, it took them, let's say, 7 months, going on to 8 months. In July 2025, we got invited, the states who participated, to come to hear the rulings. And I remember sitting down um,
In
next
The
to,
Hague.
we were in open court. Yeah, this is in July.
Hmm.
I was on my right was the delegate from St. Lucia, and on my left was the ambassador from from Bahamas,
Hmm.
and every time the judge was speaking, so we had our headphones because they had the translation and so on. They would like hit me. That's what we said. That's what we said. And I was just getting like these nudges. That's what we said. You see, you said. I was like, can I just listen
They're
to
so
this judgment?
excited.
Yeah. So everything the judge was saying, we were going through, and it was true. We were just ticking all the boxes, like everything we argued for. And when I say everything we argued for, the Caribbean region, it was just so.
and
First
and
thing,
and the Pacific region too.
yeah, the Caribbean and
Yes.
Pacific, we really
Hmm.
worked as one. And when you say Pacific, of
Hmm.
course, we talk about the Pacific Islands, right? Not
Yes,
and we're all islands. I'm not talking about, because the US, sometimes people think, okay, Hawaii is the US, but people think Pacific's, the west coast of the US. No, but we're talking about the islands. And even some Pacific Islanders, they think that Australia is like too big for us, because Australia is like a continent, really.
of
But
course.
yeah, we're
Hmm.
talking about the Pacific, the small island states. So we're talking about Vanuatu, Fiji, Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, um, Micronesia, and these countries, Tonga, Samoa.
Hmm.
So yeah, so the first thing is that the court said that the IPCC science is the best available science. Now that was,
Incredible.
yeah, and the IPCC scientist reports, they've said a lot of things in favor of small island states, like we should basically even at 1.5 degrees warming will be a disaster for small island states. They even said that straight, right?
We would be underwater.
Yeah, so even though people saying, okay, the science, the temperature goals under the Paris Agreement is between 2 degrees Celsius and 1.5, and some states say, well, we could still survive at 2. The IPCC science says, well, even at 1.5 for small island states is still dangerous, right?
Yes.
So So that was one thing, that they upheld that the IPCC science is the best available science. The second
Meaning
thing,
that we're looking at
yeah,
staying within 1.5.
yeah. And the IPCC science actually says that, in other words, 1.5 is just the lesser of the two evils, right? Um, two
Right.
degrees is definitely out, but they're saying, so if we have to renegotiate a temperature goal, which I don't think states will want to, especially the developed states, the biggest polluters, actually 1.5 will be the baseline. It should even be lower than that. But
Okay.
anyway, I don't think states will negotiate that temperature goal anyway. But um, then they went on to say that the climate crisis is not only what we call the lex specialis, which is the specialized law. So it's not only the Paris Agreement, not only the UNFCCC agreement. You have to look at human rights treaties as well, how
Mm-hmm.
climate change affects human rights, because developed countries were saying that when you come to the climate change, you can only look at the Paris Agreement. You can't look at any human rights agreements, right? So so the International Court of Justice says no. The climate change is, yes, they have specialized agreements for climate change, but you can also look at the human rights aspect of climate change. The human rights.
Meaning, for lay
Mm,
people like me, meaning
yeah.
we're looking to adhere to the 1.5-degree increase in temperature as a maximum. And
Mm,
we're not looking at these issues of climate in isolation. These issues of climate are integrated with human rights issues.
right,
Right. Good.
exactly. You
Mm-hmm.
said it even better than me, Marla. Yeah, you can't look at climate change in a
In a
vacuum. Right?
vacuum.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to look at the wider implications. So you have to look at human rights treaties,
Good.
really, basically that countries have signed on to.
Good.
So that was the second thing, and then there are a number of impacts, but I'm just trying to at least touch three or four. The third one was that intergenerational equity, that you have to have states must have obligations to the future generations,
Absolutely. They have as
right?
many rights as we do presently, the unborn
Yeah,
generations. Yes.
yeah, and as you already
Mm-hmm.
said, future generations. Sometimes when in lay speech, we might say, "Oh, my son who is 2 years old, that's the future. That's the future generations." But really, in law, your son who is 2 years old, that's the present generation, right? So future generation, as you said, is the unborn
Mm-hmm.
generation. Is a generation that's not even born yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, the future generation will be somebody born in 2030, let's say, right? So,
Right.
um, so states were saying that, well, why some states, US, Germany, Saudi Arabia, if I recall, were saying that states should not have obligations to an abstract group of people who are not even born yet. Why should I have an obligation to someone who will be born in 2045? Right? Uh, but we were saying, well, they say human rights cannot apply. In other words, it comes back maybe to that kind of, why should somebody who's not born have rights? But climate change is a very specialized issue. It affects um, persons who are not born. The persons who are not born as yet did not consent to the climate crisis, and they will be unduly
Absolutely.
burdened by the climate crisis by the time
They
they are
didn't
born.
contribute to it.
Yeah, they didn't contribute to the crisis, and they would be burdened by it, unduly burdened than the present generation. So the court accepted that agreement, that those arguments as well, that
Right.
you should have respect or you should have obligations of future generations, and that was also an uphill task, even though they had previous rulings by the court saying that future generations, in the nuclear weapons case, for example, which took place in 1996, the court said that nuclear weapons has impact on future generations. So we kind of use that argument to say,
As
well,
precedent. Yeah.
yeah, in
Mm-hmm.
this, and we even said that this climate change crisis, it was like the nuclear moment in the 96, because 96 the
Nuclear.
the
Mm-hmm.
nuclear weapons case started off with it wasn't students, but it was more NGOs and so on, but still. So we drew a comparison with that, and the court actually accepted that.
Wonderful.
So that was so that really cemented now that you have obligations to future generations. And
Hmm.
the last one I would really like to touch on, I mean, there's so many others, is
I
that the
know.
court said uh, that if you use fossil fuels, if you subsidize fossil fuels, if you trade in fossil fuels, that may amount to an international wrongful act, which countries could be sued upon. Now, notice they
Mm-hmm.
use the words, they said may amount to an international
Mm-hmm.
wrongful act. So they didn't want to say it will. May sounds like it's
It
possible. Yeah. May
may
is like,
means they opened the door, but they
yeah,
didn't say yes for sure. You could walk
yeah, yeah,
through.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's not like shall, it shall be, so there's
Yes,
a difference. We learned that all in law school as well. You
may and
open the door.
shall.
Yeah, you open
But
the
then
door
this
so
has
much.
implications for our country, Trinidad and Tobago,
Yeah,
countries
it
like
does.
Guyana,
It
and
does.
the whole
Mm,
issue, especially for Guyana. I mean, in Trinidad and Tobago, we export oil and gas for over 100 years, and we're towards the end. It's considered a mature
mm,
industry in our country, and actually,
mm,
we've been seeing declining production for 20 years, whereas Guyana is now the world's newest oil exporter, the world's fastest growing country, and a country that has acute development needs, especially as it relates to
mm,
education and healthcare. And for me, when you think about that door that was opened by this ICJ ruling that states may be found to be engaging in wrongful acts if you're exporting and subsidizing oil and
yeah.
gas,
Mm,
that you could be somehow maybe at some points held to account. It's an interesting thing because it speaks to the fact that we who are still developing now from an socioeconomic standpoint, we now have constraints placed on us in terms of
yeah.
how we develop
Mm,
versus countries that developed in the last century, right? In the
yeah.
1900s,
Mm,
we have planetary boundaries to consider,
mm,
and um, it has serious implications for us. And so that I found this very, it's something we have to think about because I don't know. I just wanted to just deviate for 1 minute
yeah, sure.
for listeners, because development and energy consumption go hand in hand. I had a
Mm,
chat once. I gave a presentation. Professor Steve Dean, not Professor Steve Keen, sorry, not
mm,
Dean, had this chart that showed he mapped the world's energy consumption and the world's GDP, and they are almost one on top of the other.
yeah.
Meaning GDP, production, economic activity is tied hand in hand with energy consumption. Now,
Mm,
energy consumption could be fossil fuel as well as it can be
wind, solar.
nuclear, renewable,
Mm,
anything, right?
mm,
So we have serious constraints now with respect to
yeah.
our development.
Yeah, and I think if you were to watch when the president of Ghana was speaking to Stephen Saku
Yes.
in Hard Talk, I think that was the point he was trying to make, right? That
Exactly.
you can't tell us what to do now. And
You've
then,
had your chance in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
1900s. But the thing is, on the
Mm,
flip side of that, those same people in Guyana and in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean were the ones most vulnerable in terms of our
mm,
countries becoming completely covered in water.
yeah.
Um,
I think the middle ground to reach in that was like, okay, there should be a kind of phase out, but we should have a mix of renewable energy in the mix as well. So for
Renewable or
years,
nuclear. There's nuclear
yeah.
as well. Hmm.
Yeah, because for years, you probably even know it better than me, but for years now, I've been hearing politicians in Trinidad and Tobago, yeah, we're going to diversify our economy. For me, I feel like I hear that talk for all my life.
Me too. Me
Yeah,
too.
we're going to diversify
And
away
I'm
from
now
oil and
50,
gas.
so long time.
We're going to diversify from oil and gas. And I'm just like, I mean, starting with Patrick Manning, even I think even President, well, Prime Minister Robinson at the time when NER was in power, I used to be hearing them talking about that. And I just feel like, have
We've
you
not
really
really made,
diversified?
no, we've not made progress.
Mm,
But Justin, I just want to talk about and it's tied, it dovetails from this. One of the key elements of this ruling, they spoke to common but differentiated responsibility as
mm,
it relates to the climate crisis, meaning that all states share responsibility, but
Mm.
we don't share responsibility equally. We share responsibility equitably.
Yeah.
And just tell
Mm.
me your thoughts on this and what it means
Yeah,
legally.
yeah. I think the ICJ, now Saint Lucia, they were one of the states in the Caribbean that really pushed for that that common but differentiated responsibility, and it really means, just as you said, that we have to distribute equally the burdens with respect to obligations. Right. So it could go back to what we are speaking about. Okay. So
Hmm.
fossil fuel industries, maybe you can say, well, those countries who have benefited, who have, or well, let's say benefited, who are the highest greenhouse
Polluted.
gas
Hmm. Hmm.
emitters, they should not phase down. They should totally phase out their fossil fuel industries. But countries which, well, for instance, Grenada, for example, they said they were like 0.01%
Of global
global
emissions. Hmm.
emissions for when it comes to country, right? So these countries should allow you should allow them a longer time to phase out their greenhouse
Absolutely,
gas.
because
That's,
if Grenada was net zero, if Barbados was net zero, it will
mm,
make no difference to the
yeah,
climate crisis.
yeah. So
So
that's
we
where,
shouldn't be rushing to be net zero, the small island
mm,
developing states,
yeah,
that is, sorry.
yeah.
Hmm.
So that's the court actually said that that is an important principle, that common but
Good.
differentiated responsibilities, and that you should take into account states who have a historical, what do you say, who are the historical contributors to climate change. You should take into account what they have done, and states who are not, um, who don't have that as much as Grenada, and maybe even I think Trinidad and Tobago, we are probably a bit higher,
Yes.
but I think that, so it should be a fair, balanced, and equitable system, and they agreed with that principle as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I
So
love
I think,
that.
mm,
I love that because we talk about this in the Caribbean all the time that we need to become more renewable energy dependent as opposed to fossil fuel. But that's from an economic standpoint because we
mm,
import, when I say we, not Trinidad and Tobago so much, but say Barbados that has one of the highest costs of electricity in the world, it's because we import fossil fuels
mm,
that have to then be converted into electricity or
mm,
at the pump. And this means that because that cost of imported fuel is so high, it affects your cost of living, cost of doing business, and it makes you a less competitive and less prosperous country. That is why we need more
mm,
renewable energy, not so much because of the environmental impact that we have. Our consumption, like you said, is a fraction of 1% of fossil
yeah.
fuels that we emit.
Yeah. I didn't even know that, with Barbados being the
Yeah,
having the
one
highest
of the
electricity
highest
bill.
costs of
Mm,
electricity. In the
mm,
Caribbean, we generally have much higher cost of electricity than the global average and certainly the average of developing countries.
yeah.
And so that means it's holding back our progress, right?
Mm,
Because like I said, all economic activity depends on energy. So
yeah.
we want to convert to a more cost effective source of energy, but not
Mm,
because of our climate, sorry, our carbon emissions. It is because of the cost of those carbon emissions if they are from fossil fuels.
yeah. So I think, I remember, environmentalists and I were having from Trinidad and Tobago. He's just like, he was telling me, this was maybe about a year ago. Was telling me like,
Mhm.
we could diversify, we could get all this renewable energy. Look at that whole Manzanilla road coming down stretch going on to Mayaro. All you need to do is like cut down all them coconut trees and put up and put up the wind turbines. But then I was just like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. But after I was like, wait no, but if we cut down all
Cut
them
down the
coconut
trees
trees,
to put up wind turbines. Like, seriously?
because he said like all that wind. But then I was thinking, but no, the coconut trees need to be there though. So
But
yeah,
you
I don't
can't
know.
put the two. You can't have
Yeah,
wind turbines and coconut trees. I mean,
yeah, you'd have to
come
cut
on.
down. Yeah, so I think it's just a mind. No, these kind of things, renewable energy. I mean, I'm not really a specialist in these kind of areas, but I'm sure we have the technology to do
We
these things.
absolutely
So we
do.
could
We
do a mix.
absolutely
We
do.
like I say, you don't need to. you don't have to say completely phase out, at least for us, using the common but differentiated responsibilities. But I think we can phase it out. We can have a mix of the fossil
Absolutely.
fuels, a mix, not much, but also we should explore green energy. We should
So,
explore. Yeah.
for example, Dominica is commissioning, Dominica and as well as many of the islands in the Caribbean have a lot of volcanic energy, right? So,
Geothermal energy, right?
geothermal, exactly. So,
Mm,
Dominica is commissioning some geothermal energy production. Guyana and Suriname have a forest, right? They're in the
yeah.
Amazon.
Mm,
Um, hydro, hydroelectric in terms
yeah.
of the rivers. We have wind, that's a possibility. I know Curacao has wind farm, Jamaica has wind farm, and many countries, especially Barbados and Aruba, have a lot of solar energy capability
Yes.
installed already. And every day, I think Trinidad and just commissioned not too long ago the largest solar farm that will exist in the Caribbean, in the English
Mm.
speaking
Oh,
Caribbean.
I didn't even hear about that. Yeah.
Right. BP was a part of that as well. And also, we have natural gas. So in Trinidad, we generate our electricity with natural gas, which is much greener than
And
using diesel or fuel
mm,
oil, which
mm,
most other countries use. I think Trinidad and Tobago and Dominican Republic are the only two, if my memory serves me correct, that uses natural gas to
right.
generate a certain amount of our electricity. So we do
Mm,
have a mix, right? And then there's also small scale nuclear, which the technology has made
mm,
such that you don't have to have a big consumption base like big countries do to have a nuclear plant. You can have small scale nuclear that can serve 100,000 people, 200,000 people. And so
mm.
these are all options that we can look at. But I just wanted to make the point, and I feel like enough people don't really recognize this, that even if all of us in the Caribbean and the Pacific were all net zero, it would make almost no difference to the climate crisis because we are like 1%
Producing
in
a small,
total.
producing a small quantity. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. It's the largest polluters, which of course are what we call the global north,
Yeah.
right? But also now you have China and India, which
Mm,
combined as 2 billion people. They on a on a aggregate or a total basis, they have a lot of emissions, but on a per capita basis, they're still very low
yeah.
compared to the global north. So they have a kind of a special case, China
Yeah.
and India.
I think for Trinidad and Tobago, we have a high per capita, I think.
We do have a high per capita emission level, and that's because of our oil and gas and our downstream
Mm,
sector. Also, we have one of the highest per capita number of cars, vehicles.
mm. All right.
Yes, so
Yeah.
that those factors kind of make us one of the higher per capita emitters on the planet. So yes, we need to do our transition as
Yeah.
well. But
Yeah.
then when we talk about a just transition, right?
Mm,
Just what does that mean? That there's justice in how we transition to renewable. Not like the president of Guyana said, you had your chance in the 1900s to industrialize. It is now
yeah.
our turn to develop.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
the same rights as you to have education, health care,
Mm.
a safe and
Well,
secure, stable.
Well,
Yes.
the council for who is the lead council for St. Vincent and the Grenadines,
Hmm.
she put it a nice way. She said that uh, Chanel Hardaway, she said that climate change is colonization on repeat. And I remember
Absolutely.
when she said that because I was the second, well, I was the co-counsel for them, and we were rehearsing this like 24 hours, 48 hours before our statement. And I remember sitting down because she went before me, and I remember sitting down and she said, "This is climate change. It's like colonization on repeat." And I was just like, "Wait, I never even heard you say that in rehearsals."
In the rehearsals. But she's right.
Yeah, but she was right. So what she was trying to say is that, and is that Grenada, when Ivan had hit Grenada in 2004, it wiped away 200% of their GDP. When
Yep.
Hurricane Maria hit Dominica in 2017, I
17.
think, it wiped away 270% of the GDP. And who do they
Within
go
hours.
to? Yeah, and who do they go to get loans? They go to the IMF. They even go to the United Kingdom and these
Hmm.
United States to get loans to build back. They go to
Loans, not
countries,
grants, loans that future
loans.
generations have to prepay in US dollars, by the way. But yes.
Exactly. So they're just in. That's why she was saying this because she was talking to me afterwards. It's a colonization and repeat
It
financial
is.
colonization. You are
It
not
is.
the ones responsible, as we say, 0.01% Grenada, and yet you have to take a loan from the United Kingdom, take a loan from the US, take a loan from the IMF, right, to
Yeah.
rebuild your economies for the next 2 3 years. It happens again. It takes 12 to 15 years for a mature nutmeg tree to grow in Grenada, and that was just wiped away in Hurricane Ivan and in um, the latest one. This is what was the one last year that they had Beryl, yeah,
Beryl,
Hurricane
yes.
Beryl, yeah, and that just wiped. So it's going to take another 12 to 15
12 to
years for them to
15
grow back,
years
and that
before their main export crop can be exported. Yeah.
and Grenada is the number two producer of
Of
nutmeg in the
nutmeg in the
world after
world. Yes,
Indonesia. After Indonesia,
absolutely.
small spice island state that have what it was 100 and something thousand people, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then we have to refinance, get loans. So that's why Deacon Mitchell, the Prime Minister, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, and Ralph
Hmm.
Gonsalves, they were two of, and I think it was Gashton Brown from Antigua. They wrote
Antigua. Mhm.
Yeah, they wrote to the foreign secretary, who happens to be of Guyanese descent as well. I heard
In the
from the UK.
UK.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
They wrote him and they said, "Well, listen, we're not paying back your loans." Basically, I said, like, we're not paying back your loans, and even if we can pay back interest, and all this should be debt cancellation and so on for all
Absolutely.
these things, that the money that we are borrowing from you to rebuild our economies, when we are not the ones who are the major climate emitters. So
Absolutely.
yes, I think that was a good point to drive home about
So
climate.
all of this speaks to our shared, so common, but differentiated responsibilities as it relates to climate crisis. And I felt like that was one of the most powerful things that came
Yeah.
out of this ruling, that
Mm,
finally somebody has said definitively, we
mm.
are all responsible, but some of us are more responsible than
Y-
others.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even one of the things they spoke about is that states should act as, and this is another global South island argument, that states should act as trustees for future generations, or for, they said, humanity and future generations. That is that states should share, well, not share, but take care of the earth, or act as guardians of the earth or the climate for future generations, the climate system. And that whole common and differentiated responsibilities comes into play again, because what the United States can do, or what the Europe can do, what France can do, will be, of course, um, much greater than what a small island state could do in terms of taking care of the earth.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where, so that is a common argument that cuts through different issues, that whole CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities. Yeah.
And the last point I want to make, Justin, is, because you would hear people say, oh, but it's how many trillions of dollars is needed to
Mm,
achieve this just transition to renewable energy, and development needs to, for example, for these sustainable development goals. I think it's, I don't want to state the figure. I thought it was 4 billion a year, but the point I wanted to make is that you think that this is a huge amount, but this actually is less money. We're talking about less money than the global north currently spends on its military budget.
mm,
Okay,
mm.
so this is
Yeah.
money that these countries already have, that they choose to spend on weapons as opposed to protecting the planet for future generations. So it's
Yeah.
not money that we don't have. It's money
Mm,
that already exists.
yeah.
It's
We don't have to
already
go
in
and pick
their
it on the
budget.
trees, right?
And we don't have to print it. We don't have to
mm,
borrow it. It's already
mm,
there, but they choose to spend it on weapons. Just
mm.
put that into perspective. So, in other words,
Yeah,
it's a matter of priority. It's a matter
yeah.
of
Well,
priority.
and I'm glad you mentioned that because there was only one judge, and her name is Justice Cleveland, from America, and she said in her, she gave a separate opinion, and she wrote that the the wars and regional conflicts, they also contribute to the climate crisis, and
They
states
do.
should try to make peace because the more you are, of course, you have to get
Manufacturing
guns,
weapons.
manufacturing guns, hydrogen bombs. They, of course, have an impact on the environment. Don't talk about nuclear bombs. That's a whole different, that's like hydrogen bombs on steroids. But let's, yeah, manufacturing weapons, manufacturing tanks, manufacturing bullets, all these
And then
things have to
shipping
go
them across to
somewhere.
wherever it is the conflict
Yeah.
is. Hmm.
Yeah. So she was just saying that, basically the climate crisis also is meaning that we have to stand for a call for peace. Of course, we know
100%.
she didn't speak about what was, of course, but it was directed towards what's going on in Gaza and what was going on in Ukraine and Russia, and why we say that, because the Palestinian Council. I remember the day of the judgment said, well, you should really read the Cleveland's judgment. She spoke about armed conflict and climate change, and that was something we argued for. So we know that even without getting too political and saying, okay, what's happening in Gaza is wrong, what's happening in Ukraine or what happened around the world is wrong. Yeah, so that is a big. In other words, she's saying the same thing that you said, that governments needs to set priorities. Um, what
Exactly.
they're doing. Yeah, yeah. In a subtle
But
way, if you read the
but
judgment. Yeah,
absolutely, but weapons manufacturing is a business,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so and
Mm,
so that business is very powerful in terms of its
mm,
lobbying. But yes, I just wanted to make this point that this money exists. This money to
mm,
finance the just transition and to finance the achievement of the sustainable development goals for the whole of humanity. That money is already there. We
mm,
don't have to borrow it. We don't have to print it. We don't have to, the manna don't
mm,
have to fall from the sky. It already exists. It's just that we choose to spend it
mm.
on war,
Yeah, like my dad said,
right?
you don't even have to go outside and look in the money tree. It's there, right?
No, it's there. It's
but I'm,
there. And
but
so the answer is already there. We don't have to find the
yeah,
solution.
but
It's
that's good to
already
know. I
there.
didn't even know. That's good to point out. And I think as well, e- even if you look at the billionaires in the world, some of these billionaires could even bail out the climate crisis if you really think of
If
it,
they
right?
wanted
But
to,
yeah, if they
yes.
wanted to, yeah. Mm, mm,
It's a matter of priorities. And let's hope that, as the younger generation is educated differently, as things like this ICJ ruling and other developments like this come to the fore, let's hope we change the minds and hearts of the decision makers
mm,
who are currently making the wrong decisions.
yeah.
And that they're people, more importantly, which is why I do these kinds of interviews, Justin, and I am so grateful that you are here. Um, that people, the average person, understands, and we make noise
Mm,
and we put pressure on our politicians to make better choices.
yeah. And I think just, I mean, to close it off, I think as
Hmm.
well that this ICJ ruling will have impacts for years to come, even centuries. I mean, we're still talking about the nuclear weapons case, and that was in 1996, which is like, yeah, that's like what,
It's 30
30,
years
30
ago.
plus years ago.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think it's not really for us now. I think the future generations, the future lawyers, the future environmental scientists, the future environmental protagonists, they're going to use
Exactly.
this ruling. They probably will be, well, we hope, in positions of government that will be able to assist. And that's why I think nobody wanted to be in the wrong side of history to try to block this issue. Um,
Good.
but the arguments are still there, so you can see the weak arguments, you can flesh them out. But I think at the end of the day, this ruling will be cited for years to come, for 50, 100 years to come, because
So,
there wouldn't be another one.
uh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so, Justin, you were part of the history of humanity, and I am
Well,
very proud that you're Trinidadian, and that you brought the Pacific and the Caribbean together. I am so
Yeah.
proud of you, and I'm so grateful for the work that you have done.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I really
And
appreciate it. And thank you for the invitation. Yeah, but the
thank
work
you.
continues. It hasn't stopped yet. The work continues. Is now how we can use this advisory opinion to how we can use it. We have the advisory opinion is just something on paper. How do we make that paper valuable? I think that's what we have to
We put it
talk
into
about.
policy. That's what we
Yeah,
do. We make
yeah,
it inform policy.
yeah,
So Justin, just to close, I'm very proud of you. I'm very grateful for the work that you've done on this, and you were part of history, of not just history for our country, history for the whole world. And I really appreciate, and I'm so grateful that you were able to make this time to be on my
yeah,
platform to talk about this. And I hope everybody watches and listens and understands how important what you did, how important it is, and how important this ICJ ruling is for all of us in the Caribbean and in the Pacific. It is 10 o'clock, going on 11 o'clock in New Zealand, where you are. It's,
yeah, yeah,
it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock for us in the Caribbean. Um,
yeah.
Thank you so much for making this time and for the work that you have done.
Appreciate it, and thank you for inviting me as well. I'm happy that we made it happen because we've been talking about this for a while.
We have
Thank you again.
been. Thank you so much.
All
And
right.
we walk good, and we will talk again another time about how this has made a difference, I'm sure.
All right.